The small details of the architectural plans spread out over Valentina's desk were the last thing on her mind as thick smoke wafted through the narrow hallway. She wasn't thinking about the clean lines she'd designed or structural integrity. All thoughts narrowed into one urgent goal: survival. Her fingers trembled as she grabbed her phone, her eyes stinging from the acrid air invading the office she'd been alone in for nearly 10 hours. The steady hum of her computer had long since faded beneath the unmistakable blaring of the fire alarm. Somewhere outside, distant sirens wailed over the morning city noise. But here, the panic was just starting to seep into the folds of the thick, toxic fog curling beneath the fluorescent lights. Valentina had worked too hard to be caught off guard. The air was hot and sharp, burning the inside of her throat with every breath. She moved swiftly, instincts honing in on escape as she edged toward the emergency exit. But when she reached the 5th-floor stairwell landing, her pulse jumped. A formidable obstacle sprawled before her, motionless, blocking the path. His hair was dark, rumpled, the shock of it matted with coagulated blood. The white shirt he wore was torn and stained with a deep crimson bloom spreading across the fabric. Without hesitation, her hands reached out, checking for a pulse before her mind caught up with her body's automatic urgency. A steady beat. He was alive. The acrid smoke thickened, choking the air into suffocating heaviness, but she refused to falter. Her jaw clenched as she managed to drag his heavy frame a few inches at a time. The fire's heat licked around the stairwell, crawling upward like a living thing intent on swallowing them whole. Valentina's arms screamed under his weight. He must have been well over 6 feet, muscle rippling beneath his soaked shirt. And yet she didn't stop. She fought the grimace pulling at her lips and the sting in her lungs, counting floors, counting steps in a staircase she knew by heart from years of working on this very building. The metal door to the ventilation shaft was barely visible through the smoke, but she found it, breathless, fingers fumbling with the latch before it swung open with a sharp creak. The narrow maintenance ladder awaited them like a lifeline. Weakly, the stranger's eyelids fluttered open, revealing piercing blue eyes that seemed too clear for someone barely conscious. His gaze locked onto hers, searching, intense. Not frightened, but focused, almost commanding. "Stay with me," she urged, her voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. A ghost of a smile tugged at his lips as he tried to form words, the accent thick and melodic. "Your eyes, green like emeralds." His words hung in the dense air, a strange and fragile acknowledgement between two people caught in disaster. She steadied herself, pressing her shoulder beneath his arm, half lifting, half dragging him up the ladder. Slowly, tortuously, they climbed into the hazy light above, the fresh, biting air of the rooftop a cruel relief. Sirens grew near, their urgency unfolding in waves of red and blue, flashing from below the roof's edge. Valentina dropped to her knees beside the stranger, pressing her cardigan hard against the deep wound dripping onto the concrete. His breaths were ragged, but steady. Moments later, paramedics surged onto the rooftop, instruments flashing. Their professional urgency was interrupted by the arrival of 3 men in sharp suits, moving with the precision and authority of a well-oiled machine. They weren't firemen, and they weren't any law enforcement she'd been trained to trust. The tallest of the suits stepped forward, voice cold and final. "We'll take it from here." Confusion and protest from the paramedics dissolved against the invisible force of the men's authority, enforcing their will with badges unseen from Valentina's vantage point. She was shoved back, her heart hammering as the strangers lifted the injured man into an elevator that whisked him away from her reach. Through the thin veil of fear and smoke, his eyes found hers once more. That same intensity, the same strange recognition that felt like a thread weaving inexplicable connection between them. Later, in a small coffee shop on the Upper West Side, Valentina sat staring at her untouched cup of espresso, thoughts replaying the night's chaos. Her phone buzzed sharply. An unknown number. Every survival instinct screamed not to answer, but curiosity tethered her fingers to the screen. "Miss Valentina Brennan?" The voice was smooth, accented but articulate, like dark velvet sliding over steel. "This is Rafael Cordare. We met last night, under unlikely circumstances." Her breath caught. The man she'd pulled from smoke and flames was calling her now. his voice carrying a strange charm that tugged at the edges of her wariness. "I want to thank you," he continued, unhurried. Properly. He spoke with a confidence that brooked no argument, familiar with control and power. She demanded to know how he'd found her number. The answer came not with hesitation, but a quiet certainty that unsettled her. "I know where you live, your sister's name, your work, even the debts you carry. Because you saved me, Valentina. And that means something, more than you realize." The realization solidified a knot of fear deep in her stomach. This wasn't just gratitude. It was a summons. He finished calmly. "Dinner, 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. I understand if you prefer public." Valentina's gaze drifted to the window. Outside, shadows moved. 3 black SUVs idling silently in the street below. "All right," she murmured into the phone. "But I'm driving myself." A pause. Then, "As you wish." The line went dead. Hours later, she found herself standing before a discreet doorway in Little Italy. Heart pounding not from exertion, but from anticipation. The street was quiet, almost reverent, the faint glow of old-world lanterns casting warm light against the ivy-clad brick. Inside, the restaurant felt like a secret kept from the world. Dinner was served at a single table, the rest of the room cleared away for privacy, a stage set for tentative truths and unspoken desires. Raphael stood as she entered, tall and imposing, yet refined. His suit was immaculate, tailored to the curve of powerful shoulders. His hair was dark, slicked back from the sharp planes of his face. Those eyes, blue and sharp, held hers in a gaze that was as much challenge as invitation. "Thank you for coming, Valentina," he said low. Their conversation danced around the edges of his life. Businesses that operated in both sunlight and shadow. A world she only glimpsed in news headlines and whispered rumors. He spoke with candid pragmatism about power, loyalty, and the cost of survival. But it was his presence that drew her in. Magnetic, dangerous. Every glance was an unspoken promise. Every pause charged with an electric tension neither dared to name aloud. The night stretched long. The conversation dipped and soared between moments of vulnerability and veiled threats. The fire between them kindled slowly, carefully, impossible to ignore. Yet when the evening ended, and she walked alone beneath the streetlights, Valentina knew one thing with cruel certainty. Her life was no longer her own. The man she saved wasn't just any stranger. He was a force that would pull her into a world where survival was a daily battle, and love was only for the brave. And she wasn't sure which she was anymore, the saved or the savior. The morning after that unsettling dinner, Valentina woke to the sound of her younger sister's panicked voice cutting through the quiet apartment. "Val, you need to see this." She stumbled out of bed, still groggy, her mind foggy with fragments of last night's conversation, the way Raphael's eyes had traced her face, the weight of his promises, the danger lurking beneath every carefully chosen word. Her sister Lily stood at the living room window, her 20-year-old face pale with worry. Below, parked along the narrow street of their Upper West Side neighborhood, 3 black SUVs sat like predators waiting for prey. Men in dark suits stood stationed at intervals, their postures rigid, professional. "They've been there since 6 this morning," Lily whispered. "Val, what's going on?" Before Valentina could answer, her phone rang. The now familiar unknown number flashed across the screen. Her heart kicked against her ribs as she answered. "Good morning, Valentina." Raphael's voice was calm, almost warm. "I hope you slept well. Your men are outside my building," she said flatly, keeping her voice steady despite the tremor threatening to betray her fear. "Protection, not surveillance," he corrected smoothly. "After last night, certain parties may have taken notice of our association. I cannot allow harm to come to you or your sister because of my world. We don't need protection. We need our lives back." A pause, heavy with unspoken truths. "I'm afraid that choice was made the moment you pulled me from that fire. But I'd like to discuss this further. Meet me this afternoon. There's a gallery opening in Chelsea. Public, safe, neutral ground." Valentina glanced at Lily, whose eyes were wide with questions she didn't know how to answer. "Fine. But the cars leave. Now." As you wish. Within minutes, the SUVs pulled away, disappearing into the morning traffic as if they'd never existed. But the unease remained, coiled tight in Valentina's chest. That afternoon, she found herself walking through the pristine white halls of a Chelsea art gallery, surrounded by abstract paintings and hushed conversations. Raphael stood near a large canvas, his presence commanding even in the crowded space. He wore a charcoal suit that fit him like armor, his dark hair perfectly styled. But it was his eyes that found her immediately. Intense, seeking. "You came?" he said as she approached, genuine pleasure warming his tone. "I came for answers," she replied, maintaining distance even as her pulse quickened. They walked slowly through the exhibit, voices low, the conversation threading between art critique and dangerous confessions. He spoke of obligations, of enemies who saw her rescue as choosing sides in a war she didn't even know existed. He described a world of territory and respect, where loyalty was currency, and betrayal meant death. "The Russians," he explained quietly, pausing before a violent red painting. "They see weakness in sentiment. The fact that I owe you a life debt makes you valuable to them, either as leverage or as a message. So I'm bait," Valentina said bitterly. "No." His hand moved as if to touch her arm, then stopped, hovering in the space between them. "You're under my protection. There's a difference. I don't want to be under anyone's protection. I want to be left alone." Raphael's jaw tightened, a flash of frustration breaking through his controlled exterior. "That luxury no longer exists. But I can offer you something else. Safety, resources, and my word that no harm will come to you or Lily while I draw breath." The intensity of his declaration sent heat coursing through her, an unwelcome attraction she couldn't quite suppress. This man was dangerous, criminal, everything rational thought told her to run from. Yet standing here, close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne, she felt the magnetic pull growing stronger. "Why do you care so much?" she asked, searching his face. "You don't know me." His eyes darkened, that piercing blue becoming storm gray. "Because you risked everything for a stranger without hesitation. Because you're brave and stubborn and refuse to be intimidated. Because..." He stopped himself, the vulnerability quickly masked. "Because I don't forget debts." The moment stretched between them, charged and heavy. Around them, gallery patrons moved like ghosts, their chatter distant and meaningless. All Valentina could focus on was the man before her and the impossible choice forming in her mind. "1 week," she heard herself saying. "I'll accept your protection for 1 week while you handle whatever threat you think exists. After that, Lily and I go back to our lives. Deal?" Raphael studied her for a long moment, then extended his hand. "Deal." His palm was warm, calloused, and the contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. The handshake lasted a fraction too long, neither willing to break the connection first. As they left the gallery together, Valentina couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just made a bargain with far greater consequences than she understood. 1 week, she told herself. 7 days. And then everything goes back to normal. But watching Raphael hold the door open for her, his protective presence both thrilling and terrifying, she suspected normal was already a distant memory. That evening, he insisted on driving her home himself. No entourage, no armed guards, just the two of them in his sleek black sedan. The city lights blurred past the windows as they drove through Manhattan, the silence between them comfortable despite the tension. "Tell me about your sister," Raphael said quietly. "Lily, yes?" Valentina nodded, surprised by the personal question. "She's studying biology at NYU, pre-med track. She wants to be a surgeon." "And you raised her?" "Our parents died in a car accident when I was 23 and she was 15. So yes, I raised her. Put myself through architecture school while working 3 jobs to keep us afloat." Raphael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "That's why you couldn't leave me in that stairwell. You understand responsibility, protecting those who can't protect themselves." "Maybe," Valentina admitted. "Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to know when to walk away from impossible situations." He glanced at her, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "I'm beginning to see that." When they reached her building, he walked her to the door despite her protests. Standing in the dim glow of the streetlight, they faced each other. Two people from different worlds, bound by circumstance and something neither dared name. "Thank you," Valentina said softly. "For today." "For listening." Raphael reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face, the touch feather light but scorching. "1 week, Valentina. Let me prove you can trust me." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and disappeared into her building. But as she climbed the stairs to her apartment, she could feel his gaze following her, protective and possessive in equal measure. 1 week, she reminded herself, but already she feared it wouldn't be nearly enough. The week unfolded in a series of carefully orchestrated encounters that blurred the line between protection and courtship. Raphael kept his distance while simultaneously being everywhere. A car waiting when she left work, a reservation at her favorite coffee shop mysteriously held in her name, flowers delivered without cards but carrying his unmistakable signature. Valentina tried to maintain her resolve, to keep the walls between them fortified and high. But each interaction chipped away at her defenses, revealing something she hadn't expected. Vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior. On the 3rd day, he invited her to lunch at a waterfront restaurant in Brooklyn. The setting was deceptively casual. Outdoor seating with views of the harbor, the autumn sun warm against her skin, but the tension between them was anything but relaxed. "You're very good at this," Valentina observed, watching him over the rim of her wine glass. "At what?" "Making danger feel normal, making me forget what you actually are." Raphael set down his fork, his expression unreadable. "And what am I, Valentina?" "A criminal, someone who operates outside the law, who hurts people when necessary." She held his gaze. "Don't insult my intelligence by pretending otherwise." Instead of anger, something like respect flickered across his features. "You're right. I won't lie to you about who I am or what I've done, but I want you to understand context." He leaned forward, voice dropping low. "My father built an empire on brutality and fear. When he died, I inherited not just his business, but his enemies, his debts, his sins. I could have walked away, let it all collapse, but that would have meant watching good men with families, with honor, get slaughtered in the power vacuum. So you became him instead?" "No." The word came sharp, definitive. "I became what I needed to be to protect what was mine. There's a difference between necessary violence and cruelty for its own sake. I have rules, lines I don't cross." His eyes searched hers. "Children, innocence, women who don't choose this life, they're untouchable. Anyone who violates that answers to me personally." The conviction in his voice sent an unwelcome shiver through her. This wasn't bravado or justification. This was a code he lived by, carved from hard experience and harder choices. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked quietly. "Because you deserve honesty, and because—" He reached across the table, his fingers stopping just short of touching hers. "Because I want you to see me clearly. Not the myth, not the fear, just Raphael." The use of his first name, spoken with such careful intimacy, made her breath catch. She should pull away, should remind him of the boundaries she'd set. Instead, her hand moved those final inches, fingertips brushing against his. The contact was electric, immediate, undeniable. His thumb traced small circles against her palm, and the simple touch felt more intimate than any kiss. "This is a mistake," Valentina whispered, even as her fingers curled around his. "Probably," Raphael agreed, his voice rough. "But I've made worse ones." They left the restaurant with hands still loosely joined, walking along the waterfront in companionable silence. The city stretched around them, alive, chaotic, beautiful in its imperfection. For a few stolen hours, they weren't a criminal and the woman he protected. They were just two people learning the dangerous geography of attraction. Later that evening, Raphael brought her to one of his legitimate businesses, a wine bar in Tribeca, with exposed brick and low amber lighting. He'd closed it for the night, creating a private sanctuary where they could talk without eyes, watching, or ears listening. "I grew up in Naples," he told her, pouring 2 glasses of deep red wine. "My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. My father blamed me for grieving, said emotion was weakness." He touched the small scar above his eyebrow unconsciously. He taught me that lesson with his fists. Valentina's heart clenched at the casual revelation of childhood trauma. Raphael, I'm not telling you this for sympathy, he continued. I'm telling you so you understand why I am the way I am. Why control matters to me. Why I don't let people in easily. He moved closer. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You terrify me, Valentina. Not because of what you might do to me, but because of what I'm willing to risk for you. Her breath came shallow, pulse hammering in her throat. We barely know each other. I know you work until exhaustion, because you're afraid of failing the people who depend on you. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you sketch building designs on napkins when you're anxious. His hand came up, cupping her jaw with surprising gentleness. I know the exact shade of green your eyes turn when you're angry. And I know that kiss I've been thinking about for days would be the best and worst decision I could make. Then don't, she managed, even as her body swayed toward his. Too late. His mouth captured hers with a hunger that stole thought and reason. The kiss was consuming. Desperate. Full of weeks of denied attraction finally given permission to burn. His hands tangled in her hair, angling her head to deepen the contact. And she responded with equal fervor, fingers gripping the lapels of his jacket to pull him impossibly closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. Tell me to stop. Tell me this is wrong, and I'll walk away. But Valentina couldn't. The words died on her lips, replaced by the truth she'd been fighting since that first moment on the smoke-filled rooftop. I can't. Good, he murmured, and kissed her again. They stayed in that wine bar until the early morning hours, alternating between heated kisses and quiet conversations that peeled back layers neither had shown anyone else. It was reckless and foolish and absolutely inevitable. When Raphael finally drove her home, his hand found hers in the darkness of the car. Fingers interlaced like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Your week is almost up, he said quietly as they sat parked outside her building. I know. And? Valentina looked at their joined hands, at the man who'd upended her carefully constructed life with his dangerous world and devastating honesty. Logic screamed to run, but her heart, treacherous and insistent, had already made its choice. Ask me again tomorrow, she whispered. Raphael lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt like both promise and warning. Tomorrow, then. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Valentina knew she was falling, and the most terrifying part was that she no longer wanted to catch herself. Tomorrow came with a clarity Valentina hadn't expected. She woke with purpose, dressed carefully, and called Raphael before she could second-guess herself. I want to understand your world, she said without preamble when he answered. Not just the parts you think I can handle, all of it. A pause, then. Are you certain? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. He picked her up an hour later, and instead of restaurants or galleries, he drove her to a warehouse in Red Hook. The building was nondescript from the outside, but inside, men worked with efficient precision. Loading crates, checking manifests, moving with the choreographed ease of a well-run operation. Wine and olive oil, Raphael explained, gesturing to the legitimate imports stacked along one wall. From family vineyards in Campania, everything properly documented and taxed. He led her deeper into the space. But not everything that comes through this port is legal. He showed her the reality without glamorizing it. The gambling operations, the protection payments from businesses who paid to avoid trouble his own people would otherwise create. The gray areas where legality blurred into something murkier. He didn't hide his role or minimize the harm. I won't pretend this is noble, he said as they stood in his office overlooking the warehouse floor. But I keep order. Without structure, this city would tear itself apart with competing factions. I enforce rules. I prevent chaos. Valentina absorbed it all, the weight of what she was choosing settling onto her shoulders. And the people who break your rules face consequences. His tone was matter of fact. I'm not asking you to approve, Valentina. I'm asking you to see me clearly and decide if you can live with what I am. She turned to face him fully, searching his expression for deception or manipulation. But all she found was brutal honesty, and something that looked like fear. Fear that she'd walk away. that his truth would be too much. "I'm not fragile," she said firmly. "I don't need you to protect me from reality or make decisions for me. If I'm going to be part of your life, I need to be a partner, not someone you shield." Something shifted in Raphael's expression, surprise giving way to deep respect. He closed the distance between them, hands framing her face with surprising tenderness. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "I'm terrified," she admitted. "But I'm also tired of playing it safe. My whole life has been about responsibility and doing the right thing. Maybe for once, I want to choose something dangerous." "Dangerous," Raphael repeated, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "That's what you think this is? Isn't it?" "Absolutely." His mouth curved into a half smile that made her pulse race. "But it's also the most honest thing I've ever felt." The kiss was different this time, less desperate, more deliberate, a claiming and surrender happening simultaneously. His hand slid into her hair while hers fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer until no space remained between their bodies. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Raphael rested his forehead against hers. "There's something else you should know." The seriousness in his tone made her tense. "What?" "The threats I mentioned. The Russians who might target you. They're not hypothetical. There's a man named Viktor Sokolov who's been trying to take over Italian territory for years. He sees me as an obstacle. And now that you're associated with me," he pulled back to meet her eyes, "you become a target too. Not just protection, but potential leverage." Fear coiled in Valentina's stomach, but she refused to let it show. "Then we deal with it. Together. I have people watching you and Lily constantly, my best security team. But I need you to be smart, cautious. No unnecessary risks." "Says the man whose entire life is a risk," she countered. "Exactly why I know better than anyone what we're up against." His expression hardened. "Promise me you'll be careful. Promise you won't take chances with your safety or Lily's." The protectiveness in his voice, the genuine concern, melted something inside her she'd kept frozen for years. "I promise. But you have to promise something too." "What?" "Don't shut me out. Don't try to handle everything alone because you think that's protecting me. I need to know what's happening, even when it's scary." Raphael studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Deal. Full transparency. Even when I don't want to give it." They sealed the promise with another kiss, this one tender and full of unspoken commitment. When they left the warehouse, his hand found hers naturally, and Valentina realized with startling clarity that somewhere between the fire and now, between fear and fascination, she'd fallen completely. That evening, Raphael took her to his home for the first time. Not the fortress mansion he'd mentioned, but a penthouse apartment in Midtown with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The space was sophisticated but surprisingly warm, filled with books and art that spoke to depth beyond his dangerous reputation. "I bought this place 5 years ago," he explained, pouring wine in the modern kitchen. "Somewhere that was mine, separate from family history and obligations." Valentina wandered to the windows, watching lights twinkle across Manhattan's sprawling landscape. "It's beautiful. It's home." He came up behind her, hands settling on her hips, chin resting on her shoulder. "Or it could be, if you wanted." Her breath caught at the implication. "Raphael." "Too fast," he acknowledged. "I know, but I want you to understand my intentions. This isn't casual for me, Valentina. You're not a distraction or temporary fascination. I'm all in, completely, and I need to know if you are too." She turned in his arms, meeting those intense blue eyes that had haunted her since the rooftop. "I'm terrified of what being all in means, of the danger, the uncertainty, the fact that loving you could get me or Lily hurt. Loving me," he repeated quietly, catching the admission she hadn't meant to make. "Yes," she whispered, because denying it now felt pointless. "I'm falling in love with you, and it scares me more than anything else in this entire situation." Raphael's kiss was reverent, worshipful, like she'd given him something precious beyond measure. "I fell the moment you risked your life for mine. Every second since has just been me trying to catch up to what I already knew." They moved to the couch, wrapped in each other, sharing stories and secrets as the city glittered beyond the glass. He told her about growing up in Naples, about his mother's kindness before cancer took her, about building something better than his father's brutal legacy. She told him about late nights studying while Lily slept, about the crushing responsibility of being parent and sister simultaneously, about dreams of designing buildings that change skylines. "You will," Raphael said with absolute certainty. "You're too talented, too driven not to. And I'll make sure you have every opportunity." "I don't want your money or influence," Valentina protested. "I know. That's why I want to give it." He kissed her temple. "Let me support your dreams, even if you won't let me solve your problems." The night deepened, conversation giving way to heated touches and whispered confessions. When Raphael finally drove her home in the early morning hours, Valentina felt fundamentally changed. Not diminished by his world, but expanded, open to possibilities she'd never allowed herself to imagine. "Stay safe," he murmured at her door, reluctant to let her go. "You too," she replied, stealing one last kiss before disappearing inside. As she climbed the stairs, Valentina knew the week she'd promised was irrelevant now. She was in this completely, for better or worse, and somehow, despite every rational objection, it felt exactly right. The fragile peace shattered on a Thursday afternoon when Valentina received a text from an unknown number. A single photo. Lily leaving her biology lecture, two unfamiliar men visible in the background, watching her with predatory focus. Valentina's hands shook as she immediately called Raphael, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Someone sent me a picture of Lily. There are men following her." "Stay where you are," Raphael commanded, already moving. She could hear him issuing rapid orders to people nearby. "I'm sending a team to her campus now. Don't leave your office. I'm coming to you." The 20 minutes before he arrived felt like hours. Valentina paced her small office, phone clutched in white-knuckled hands, imagining every terrible scenario. When Raphael finally walked through her door with 2 security guards flanking him, the relief was almost painful. "She's safe," he said immediately, crossing to her. "My men have her. They're bringing her to a secure location." "What secure location?" "Raphael, what's happening?" His expression was grim. "Viktor Sokolov is making his move. The photo was a message. He knows about you and Lily. He's showing me he can reach what I care about." Fear turned to anger, hot and fierce. "So we're just pawns in your war with this man?" "No." Raphael gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're not pawns. You're leverage because I care about you. That's on me, and I'll fix it." "How?" Valentina demanded. "By hiding us. By controlling where we go and who we see. That's not a life, Raphael. That's a prison. It's temporary, until I eliminate the threat. And the next threat? And the one after that?" She pulled away from him, wrapping her arms around herself. "This is what I was afraid of. Becoming collateral damage in a world I didn't choose." Raphael's jaw tightened, pain flashing across his features. "Then maybe you were right to be afraid. Maybe I was selfish bringing you into this." "Don't," Valentina snapped. "Don't make this decision for me. I chose you, remember? I chose this with eyes open. But that doesn't mean I'm going to stand here helplessly while you dictate every aspect of my safety without including me in the conversation." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise giving way to grudging respect. "What do you want then?" "I want to be part of the solution. I want to know the plan, the risks, everything. And I want you to trust that I'm strong enough to handle it." They stared at each other, the tension between them crackling with more than just fear. This was the first real test of their relationship. Whether Raphael could relinquish control, whether Valentina could stand firm in the face of genuine danger. Finally, Raphael nodded slowly. "All right, we do this together, but you follow security protocols. No arguments." "Agreed." He pulled her into his arms then, holding her tight enough that she could feel his heart hammering against her chest. "I can't lose you. Either of you. The thought of someone hurting you because of me. Then we make sure that doesn't happen," Valentina interrupted, pulling back to cup his face. "But we do it as partners." The safe house Raphael took them to was a brownstone in Brooklyn, discreetly guarded but comfortable. Lily was already there, furious and frightened in equal measure. What the hell is going on, Val? She demanded the moment they walked in. These men just grabbed me off campus and wouldn't explain anything. They were protecting you, Raphael said calmly. There's a threat against people associated with me. Until it's neutralized, you and Valentina need to stay somewhere secure. Lily's eyes went wide. A threat? What kind of threat? Valentina sat beside her sister, taking her hands. The kind that Raphael is going to handle. But for now, we need to be smart and careful. This is insane, Lily whispered. Val, what have you gotten us into? The question cut deep, because Valentina had been asking herself the same thing. But looking at Raphael, at the genuine concern and determination in his expression, she knew her answer hadn't changed. Something complicated, she admitted, but something I'm choosing anyway. The days that followed tested every limit of patience and trust. Raphael divided his time between the safe house and dealing with the Russian threat, leaving Valentina to navigate Lily's questions and her own growing anxiety. The close quarters intensified everything. Fear, frustration, and a simmering desire that had nowhere to go. On the third night, after Lily had finally fallen asleep, Valentina found Raphael on the brownstone's back patio, smoking a cigarette and staring into the darkness. She'd never seen him smoke before. Bad habit, he acknowledged when she joined him. I quit years ago. Stress brings it back. Talk to me, Valentina said softly, taking the cigarette from his fingers and stubbing it out. What's happening? Raphael was silent for a moment. Then, Sokolov wants a meeting. Neutral territory, just the two of us. He says he's willing to negotiate. Do you believe him? No, but I can't ignore the offer either. He turned to face her fully. If something happens to me, don't. Valentina pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't talk like that. I have to. He caught her hand, holding it against his chest. If something happens, Gabriel will make sure you and Lily are protected. He has instructions, resources set aside. You'll be safe. I don't want to be safe without you, Valentina said fiercely. So you need to come back. That's not negotiable. Raphael pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. You undo me. You know that? Every carefully constructed wall, every defense I built. You walk right through them like they're nothing. Good, she murmured against his shoulder. I don't want your walls. I want you. The kiss was inevitable, desperate, fueled by fear and need in equal measure. They crashed together like storm fronts colliding, all heat and urgency. His hands tangled in her hair while hers gripped his shirt hard enough to tear fabric. Inside, Raphael managed between kisses. We can't do this here. They barely made it to his room before clothes started coming off, hands exploring skin with frantic intensity. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a declaration. When they finally came together, it felt like the world narrowed to just them. Two people clinging to each other against the darkness pressing in from all sides. Afterward, tangled in sheets and each other, Valentina traced the scars on Raphael's chest. Tell me their stories. So he did. Each mark a memory of violence survived, lessons learned the hard way, and she shared her own scars, the emotional ones carried from years of responsibility and loss. They mapped each other's damage with gentle fingers and gentler words, building intimacy from shared vulnerability. I love you, Raphael said into the quiet darkness. I know it's fast, probably insane, but I need you to know, whatever happens, I love you. Valentina's throat tightened with emotion. I love you too, which is why you're going to be smart at this meeting. Come back to me. Always, he promised, and kissed her again. The morning of the meeting arrived too quickly. Raphael dressed carefully, checking weapons with the same attention he gave his suit. Valentina watched from the bed, memorizing every detail, the set of his shoulders, the concentration in his expression, the way his hands moved with practiced efficiency. Be careful, she said, as he prepared to leave. Raphael crossed back to the bed, cupping her face between his palms. I'll come back to you. That's a promise. The kiss was long and deep, full of everything words couldn't express. When he finally pulled away, Valentina had to physically restrain herself from begging him not to go. Instead, she said, I'll be waiting. He left with Gabriel and 3 other men, And Valentina spent the longest hours of her life pacing the safe house, watching the clock, and trying not to imagine worst-case scenarios. Lily sat quietly on the couch, her presence a comfort even though neither spoke. When Raphael's car finally pulled up outside, Valentina nearly collapsed with relief. He walked through the door looking exhausted but unharmed, and she threw herself into his arms without hesitation. "It's done," he said against her hair. "Sokolov agreed to a temporary truce. It won't last forever, but it buys us time." "How much time?" "Enough." He pulled back to look at her. "Enough for us to figure out how to actually live instead of just survive." The truce with Sokolov lasted exactly 3 weeks before it crumbled. Raphael received word through back channels that the Russian had no intention of honoring their agreement. He was merely buying time to position his own forces for a decisive strike. "He played me," Raphael admitted, pacing his penthouse office while Valentina watched from the doorway. "I should have known better than to trust anything he said." "So what now?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "Now I stop being reactive and start being proactive." He turned to face her, jaw set with determination. "I'm going to end this threat permanently. But that means going on the offensive, and it's going to be dangerous." Valentina crossed the room to him. "Then I'm with you, whatever you need." "What I need is for you to be safe," Raphael countered. But his protest lacked conviction. They'd already established that she wouldn't be sidelined. "What you need is someone you trust at your back," she corrected. "And like it or not, that's me now." The plan Raphael devised was bold, risky, and entirely dependent on timing. He'd learned through his intelligence network that Sokolov would be attending a charity gala at a Manhattan hotel. Public enough to avoid outright violence, but isolated enough for a confrontation. Raphael intended to force a final meeting, with enough witnesses and security to prevent either side from making catastrophic mistakes. "I want you there," he told Valentina 2 days before the event. "But not as bait or a pawn, as my partner. Sokolov needs to see that I'm not vulnerable, that the people I care about make me stronger, not weaker. What if he tries something anyway? Then we handle it." Raphael's hand found hers. Together, the night of the gala arrived with electric tension. Valentina wore a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves and made her eyes luminous. Raphael, devastating in a tailored tuxedo, couldn't seem to stop touching her. Small gestures of possession and protection that betrayed his nerves despite his controlled exterior. "You're stunning," he murmured as they entered the hotel ballroom, his hand warm against the small of her back. "You're stalling," she replied, but squeezed his hand reassuringly. Sokolov was easy to spot. A tall man with cold eyes and an arrogant bearing, surrounded by his own contingent of well-dressed enforcers. When his gaze landed on Raphael and Valentina, something predatory flickered across his features. "Cordare," Sokolov greeted as they approached, his accent thick. "And this must be the architect, the woman who started all this trouble." "Valentina Brennan," she said coolly, refusing to be intimidated. "And I didn't start anything. I just saved a life, a costly decision," Sokolov observed, "for everyone involved. Enough games." Raphael cut in, his voice low and dangerous. "You broke our agreement. You've been positioning your people for an attack. I want to know why." Sokolov smiled, showing too many teeth. "Because you're weak, Cordare. This woman, your sentimentality. It makes you vulnerable. And in our world, vulnerability is death." "You're wrong," Valentina said before Raphael could respond. "Love isn't weakness. It's what gives people something worth fighting for. Something worth protecting at any cost." The Russian's eyes narrowed. "Pretty words. Let's see if you still believe them when the fighting starts." "It doesn't have to come to that," Raphael said, though his hand had moved subtly toward the weapon concealed beneath his jacket. "We can end this now, peacefully, or I can make sure you regret every threat you've made." For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Years of rivalry and violence condensed into a single charged exchange. Then Sokolov laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "You think you can threaten me at a charity gala? With all these witnesses?" He gestured around the crowded ballroom. "You're more desperate than I thought." "I'm not threatening you," Raphael replied calmly. "I'm giving you a choice. Walk away from this territory, from my people, and I'll let you leave this city with your operation intact. Or push forward, and I'll dismantle everything you've built piece by piece. Bold talk from a man in love, Sokolov sneered. But something in his expression had shifted, calculation replacing bravado. The boldest, Raphael agreed. Because unlike you, I have something to lose. And that makes me far more dangerous than you can imagine. The confrontation ended without violence, but the threat lingered like smoke. Sokolov left with his men shortly after, and Valentina released a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That was intense, she said, as Raphael guided her toward a quiet corner of the ballroom. You were incredible. He pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. The way you stood up to him, unafraid. I was terrified, Valentina admitted. But I wasn't going to let him see it. Raphael kissed her then, deep and possessive, uncaring about the public setting or the eyes surely watching. When they broke apart, both breathing harder, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. Take me home, Valentina whispered. They barely made it through the penthouse door before clothes started coming off. The need between them was urgent, consuming, fueled by adrenaline and relief in equal measure. Raphael backed her against the nearest wall, hands mapping her body with desperate hunger. I wanted to kill him, he confessed between kisses, his voice rough. For looking at you like that. For threatening what's mine. I'm not yours, Valentina managed, even as her body arched into his touch. I'm with you. There's a difference. Raphael pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You're right. And that's why this works. Because you're choosing me every day, despite knowing exactly what I am. Show me, she challenged. Show me what we are together. He did, carrying her to the bedroom and laying her down with surprising gentleness, before following her onto the silk sheets. Every touch was worship and claiming combined. Every kiss a promise spoken without words. They moved together with an urgency born from facing danger and emerging intact, bodies communicating what language couldn't express. Afterward, wrapped in each other in tangled sheets, Raphael traced patterns on her bare shoulder. I need to tell you something. The seriousness in his tone made Valentina's heart skip. What? After what happened tonight, after seeing how Sokolov looks at you, I'm considering stepping back from active leadership, putting Gabriel in charge of day-to-day operations while I transition to a more advisory role. Valentina pushed up on one elbow to look at him properly. Why? Because I want a life with you. A real one. Not one measured in threats and truces and constantly looking over my shoulder. His hand cupped her cheek. You make me want things I never thought possible. Stability, peace, maybe even a family someday. Tears pricked at Valentina's eyes. Raphael, I'm not saying it'll be immediate or easy. There's a process to stepping back, ensuring continuity and loyalty. But I want you to know that's my goal, that you're not just accepting my world. I'm working to build a new one for us. She kissed him with all the emotion swelling in her chest. I love you, and whatever that future looks like, I want to build it with you. They made love again, slower this time, savoring every touch and kiss. The city glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, oblivious to the two people inside rewriting their futures one choice at a time. As dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Valentina lay in Raphael's arms and felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not naive optimism, but genuine belief that despite the danger and uncertainty, they could make this work. What are you thinking? Raphael murmured, fingers threading through her hair. That this is real, she replied. Scary and complicated and absolutely real. Best thing that's ever happened to me, he said, kissing her forehead. You saving my life? That was fate giving me a second chance I didn't deserve. We both got a second chance, Valentina corrected, and I'm not planning to waste mine. They stayed in bed until the afternoon, talking about possibilities and plans, mapping out a future that seemed impossible weeks ago, but now felt tantalizingly within reach. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time since that smoke-filled night, Valentina believed they'd walk it together. The transition Raphael promised wasn't simple or quick. 3 months passed in a delicate dance between his old life and the new one they were trying to build together. Some days were easier than others. Quiet mornings in his penthouse, stolen afternoons where they could pretend to be just another couple navigating the complexities of love. Other days reminded them both exactly how far they still had to go. Valentina sat across from Raphael in his study, architectural plans spread before her. She'd been working on a community center project, something that would serve the neighborhood where she grew up. But funding had fallen through twice, leaving her frustrated and questioning whether her dream would ever materialize. "Let me help," Raphael said for the 3rd time that week. "No." Her answer was automatic, firm. "I need to do this on my own merit, not because my boyfriend can write a check. It's not charity, Valentina. It's investment. The design is brilliant. The neighborhood needs it. And everyone will assume I only got it because of you," she interrupted, setting down her pencil. "I can't build my career on your influence, Raphael. I won't." Frustration flickered across his features before he schooled them into neutrality. "Your pride is going to be the death of this project. Maybe, but at least it'll be mine." She softened her tone, reaching for his hand. "I appreciate what you're trying to do. I do, but I need to succeed or fail on my own terms. Can you understand that?" He was quiet for a long moment, thumb tracing circles on her palm. "Yes, even if I hate watching you struggle when I could make it easier. That's love," Valentina said with a slight smile, respecting someone enough to let them fight their own battles. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, but the underlying tension remained. This was their constant negotiation, balancing his protective instincts with her fierce independence, finding middle ground between two very different worlds. Lily had slowly come to accept Raphael's presence in their lives, though she remained skeptical. One evening, the 3 of them shared dinner at the penthouse, an attempt at normalcy that felt both comfortable and strange. "So you're really stepping back from the whole mob boss thing?" Lily asked with characteristic bluntness, twirling pasta on her fork. "Lily," Valentina warned. "What?" "It's a legitimate question." She looked at Raphael expectantly. "Because if you're going to be part of Val's life long-term, I need to know what that actually means." Raphael set down his wineglass, meeting the younger woman's challenging gaze with respect rather than irritation. "Fair question. And yes, I'm transitioning Gabriel into primary leadership. It's a slow process. You can't just walk away from this kind of organization overnight. But my goal is to focus on legitimate businesses within 2 years, and the people who don't want you to step back are being convinced," Raphael replied carefully. "Sometimes through negotiation, sometimes through other means." "Other means," Lily repeated. "See, that's the part that scares me, because my sister is all in with you, and if something happens, nothing will happen to her," Raphael interrupted, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "I would burn my entire empire to the ground before I let anyone hurt Valentina." "You have my word on that." The intensity of his declaration hung in the air. Lily studied him for several beats, then nodded slowly. "Okay, but if you break her heart or get her killed, I know people in med school who could make your death look like natural causes." Despite the tension, Raphael laughed, genuine amusement breaking through his controlled facade. "Noted. And fair." The evening ended with cautious understanding rather than full acceptance, but it was progress. As Lily left, she hugged Valentina tightly. "He really loves you," she whispered. "I can see it. Just be careful, okay?" "Always," Valentina promised, though they both knew careful had stopped being an option months ago. Later that night, wrapped in Raphael's arms in his massive bed, Valentina voiced the fear that had been growing in her heart. What if we can't make this work? What if the differences between our worlds are too big? Raphael shifted to look at her properly, moonlight from the windows casting shadows across his handsome features. Then we fight harder. Build bridges. Compromise until we find something that works for both of us. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. His hand cupped her face. But you're worth it. We're worth it. And I refuse to believe that love this strong can't overcome logistics and complications. She kissed him then, pouring every ounce of feeling into the contact. They made love slowly, reverently, bodies speaking promises that words couldn't quite capture. Afterward, tangled together in the silk sheets, Valentina felt the fear recede, not disappear, but become manageable. The next morning brought unexpected news. Sokolov had been arrested by federal agents on racketeering charges. The investigation had apparently been building for years, finally culminating in an indictment that would keep him imprisoned for decades. "Did you have anything to do with this?" Valentina asked as Raphael took the phone call that delivered the information. He was silent for a moment. Then, "I may have provided certain evidence to certain people. Nothing that could be traced back to me, but enough to ensure he'd face consequences." "So it's over? The threat is really over?" "This particular threat, yes." Raphael pulled her close. "There will always be others, Valentina. That's the reality of my world. But this was the most immediate danger, and now it's neutralized." Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost painful. "We can breathe again. We can live again," Raphael corrected. "Actually live, not just survive day to day." They celebrated quietly that evening. Just the two of them and a bottle of expensive wine on his penthouse terrace. The city stretched before them, alive with possibility and light. "I've been thinking," Raphael said, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the skyline, "about what comes next. For us." Valentina's heart picked up speed. "What about it? I want more than stolen moments and careful navigation. I want mornings waking up beside you, evenings cooking dinner together, arguments about whose turn it is to do dishes." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to move in with me, officially. Make this place ours instead of just mine." The proposal was practical, logical, and utterly terrifying. Living together meant committing fully, erasing the safety of separate spaces and separate lives. It meant accepting that this relationship wasn't temporary or transitional. It was permanent. "That's a big step," Valentina said carefully. "I know. And if it's too soon, I understand. But I need you to know that's where my head is, where my heart is." His thumb traced her jaw. "I'm all in, Valentina. Completely, permanently, terrifyingly all in." She thought about her small apartment, about the life she'd built brick by careful brick, about independence and pride, and the fierce determination to never need anyone. And then she thought about mornings with Raphael, about building something new together rather than clinging to what had been. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll move in with you." The kiss was celebratory and passionate, full of promise and hope. They made love right there on the terrace, under the stars and city lights, claiming each other with renewed intensity. Later, lying tangled together on the outdoor couch, Valentina realized something fundamental had shifted. She wasn't losing herself in Raphael's world. She was expanding her own to include him. The difference was subtle, but crucial. "What are you thinking?" Raphael asked, fingers trailing lazily down her spine. "That I'm happy," Valentina replied simply. Scared and uncertain about 1,000 things, but genuinely happy. "Good." He kissed her temple. "Because you deserve happiness. We both do. And I'm going to spend every day proving you made the right choice." "You already have," she whispered. The city glittered around them, indifferent to two people rewriting their futures with courage and love. The road ahead would have obstacles, doubts and dangers, and the constant negotiation of two very different lives. But lying in Raphael's arms beneath the vast night sky, Valentina believed they could face anything together. And that belief, fragile and fierce, was everything. 6 months later, Valentina stood in the construction site of her community center, hard hat in place, watching workers pour concrete for the foundation. She'd secured funding through a competitive grant program. No connections, no favors, just her design and determination. The victory was hers alone, and it tasted sweeter than anything Raphael's money could have bought. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Dinner tonight? Have something to show you." She smiled, typing back a quick confirmation before returning her attention to the foreman's questions about load-bearing walls. This was her life now, balancing architectural dreams with a relationship that continued to challenge and fulfill her in equal measure. Living with Raphael had been an adjustment. His penthouse was now truly theirs, with her sketches covering the walls and her books filling previously empty shelves. They'd learned each other's rhythms, his tendency to work late into the night, her need for morning silence and strong coffee. Fights happened, sometimes heated, but they'd developed a language of compromise that worked more often than it failed. The nightmares still came occasionally. Raphael would wake gasping, reaching for weapons that weren't there, eyes wild with memories of violence she'd never fully understand. On those nights, Valentina held him until the trembling stopped, offering presence rather than words. She was learning that love meant bearing witness to darkness without trying to fix what couldn't be healed, only managed. That evening, she found Raphael in his study, bent over paperwork with the intense focus she'd come to recognize. He looked up when she entered, face softening in a way it only did for her. "How's the site?" he asked, pulling her onto his lap. "On schedule and under budget." Pride colored her voice. "We should be ready for the opening ceremony in 8 months." "I'm proud of you," Raphael said, and meant it. He'd learned to support her ambitions without overshadowing them, to celebrate her victories without taking credit. The growth had been hard-won for both of them. "You said you had something to show me." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small velvet box. Valentina's breath caught. "Before you panic," Raphael said quickly, "this isn't what you think. Or maybe it is, but not exactly." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small emerald, the exact shade of her eyes. "It's a promise. Not of marriage, not yet, but of intention. Of the future I want us to build together." Tears pricked at Valentina's eyes as he slid the ring onto her right hand. "Raphael, I know we agreed to take things slow, to figure out the logistics before making permanent commitments. And I'm respecting that. But I needed you to know that when you're ready, whenever you're ready, I'll be here. Waiting, hoping, believing in us." She kissed him with everything she felt. Love and gratitude and the bone-deep certainty that this complicated, dangerous, wonderful man was exactly who she was meant to find. They made love right there in his study, urgent and tender, bodies communicating what words couldn't quite express. Later, curled together on the leather couch, Valentina admired the ring on her finger. "It's perfect." "You're perfect," Raphael corrected. "I'm just the lucky bastard who gets to love you." The transition of power within Raphael's organization had progressed steadily. Gabriel now handled most day-to-day operations, with Raphael serving more as consultant than commander. It wasn't a complete exit. That would likely never be possible, but it was a sustainable middle ground that allowed them to breathe. Sunday dinners became tradition. Lily would join them at the penthouse, often bringing classmates or the man she'd started dating, a law student with an earnest face and careful manners. Gabrielle sometimes joined them too, along with a few of Raphael's most trusted people. It was an odd family they'd assembled, unconventional and imperfect, but theirs. "This is weird, right?" Lily said one evening, helping Valentina clear plates while the men argued about football in the living room. "A year ago, you were working yourself to death in a tiny office. Now you're living with a reformed mob boss and hosting dinner parties. Reformed is a strong word," Valentina replied with a smile. "But yes, it's weird. Also wonderful. Life is complicated like that. You're happy, though. Really happy. I can see it." "I am." Valentina looked through the doorway at Raphael, watching him laugh at something Gabriel said, his guard completely down in the safety of home. Terrified sometimes, uncertain about lots of things, but genuinely happy. Lily hugged her sister tight. "Then I'm happy for you. Even if your boyfriend still kind of scares me." "He should," Valentina said honestly. "He's capable of terrible things when necessary. But with the people he loves, he's capable of such tenderness it breaks my heart." That night, after everyone had left and the penthouse was quiet again, Raphael found Valentina on the terrace where this had all begun. Two people facing impossible odds and choosing each other anyway. "Come here often?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "Only when I need to remember how far we've come." She leaned back against his chest. "Do you have regrets? About choosing this life over the one you had before?" Raphael was quiet for a moment, considering. "No. That life was survival, power, endless cycles of violence and territory. This, he turned her to face him. This is living. Waking up next to you, building something legitimate, having Sunday dinners with family. This is everything I didn't know I wanted until you showed me it was possible, even when I'm stubborn and refuse your help. Especially then, he said with a smile. Your independence is what makes you extraordinary. I wouldn't change it for anything. They stood together under the stars, the city alive around them. Two people who'd found each other in fire and forged something lasting from the ashes. The future stretched ahead, uncertain and full of challenges they'd face together. I love you, Valentina said softly. I need you to know that, always, no matter what comes. I love you too, Raphael replied, kissing her forehead. More than I thought myself capable of loving anyone. You saved my life that night, Valentina. Not just from the fire, but from a future of emptiness I didn't even realize I was living. We saved each other, she corrected. You showed me that it's okay to let someone in, to share the weight instead of carrying everything alone. They made love later, slow and reverent. Bodies moving together with the practiced ease of deep familiarity. Every touch was a promise renewed. Every kiss a declaration of chosen commitment. In the weeks that followed, life continued its steady rhythm. Valentina's community center took shape, each beam and wall a testament to her vision and determination. Raphael's businesses flourished under Gabriel's leadership, allowing him to step back further than he'd thought possible. They traveled together, Italy to see where Raphael grew up, California to visit Valentina's extended family, small escapes that felt like stolen paradise. The nightmares came less frequently. The threats that had once seemed insurmountable faded into manageable background noise. They learned to live with the complications rather than against them, building a life that honored both their pasts and their hopes for the future. One evening, standing at the construction site as the sun set behind her nearly completed community center, Valentina realized something profound. She'd spent so many years afraid of failing, of not being enough, of letting people down. But loving Raphael, accepting his complicated world while maintaining her own identity, had taught her that fear and courage could coexist. Her phone rang. Raphael, checking in as he always did. Hey, she answered. I'm just leaving the site. Everything looks incredible. Come home, he said simply. I miss you. Home. The word settled into her chest, warm and right. Not just a place, but a person. A choice made every single day. On my way, she promised. As Valentina drove through the city streets toward the penthouse, toward Raphael, and the life they'd built against impossible odds, she felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. For the fire that brought them together, for the courage to choose danger over safety, for the love that refused to be reasonable or simple. The road ahead would have obstacles. Raphael's past wouldn't disappear completely, and her determination to maintain independence would continue to challenge his protective instincts. But they'd face it together, with honesty and compromise, and the fierce commitment that had carried them this far. She pulled into the parking garage, took the elevator up to their floor, and opened the door to find Raphael waiting, tall and strong, and hers in all the ways that mattered. Welcome home, he said, pulling her into his arms. And in that moment, Valentina knew with absolute certainty that saving him from that burning building had been the beginning of saving herself. They'd found each other in chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. That was love. Messy, complicated, absolutely worth it.